live, and we're going live, and we're live. Hello, everybody. Hello again, Ether. Thanks for joining me, everybody. Hope you're all keeping well. Oh, fluid's not such a stormy here today, but it's getting chilly. But it's been a bit nice today here, actually, a bit fresh. So there we go. I hope you're all keeping well, as I said, and yeah, I'll do my wee run into the tonight's episode. So we're starting to look at the planet Arrakis. Excuse me, and Frank Herbert's message here, really his ecological message. And as I think we've used this word with Frank before, it's paradoxical. I think there's something slightly schizophrenic about Frank's ideas, and I don't know if that's whether he's presenting different viewpoints or not. But yeah, so Arrakis itself, the planet Dune, is really interesting, and it's the planet that's our educator in ecology from Frank's point of view. And sounds good, thanks. I'm getting more natural at this, Brad. I'm forgetting to ask hey everyone, what's the sound? But thank you very much for letting me know. That's a sort of forget. Yeah, actually, I haven't brought the microphone down again. There you go, Brad. That's possibly a little bit better. Do apologize about that. The other night there, I left it hanging way up in the air, and the sound is good. That's great, folks. That's good. Hope you're all keeping well, as I was saying, Brad. How's things out there? I was going to say on YouTube. How's things in Oz, Brad? Is it okay? Have you had any more word about getting to see Dune a bit earlier? Is it still the 2nd of December, Brad? I'm just wondering. There's David saying, howdy, Doc. Ether, Brad, Babs, anyone else who's lurking? Yeah, Babs there. Hello, Babs, as well. Hi, David. Thanks for joining us. We're just sort of having a bit of banter at the start here, as usual. Just asking Brad how things are going out in Australia and whether they've changed the dates for the 2nd of December. But I'd imagine that they're probably set in stone, bro. But there we go. Still, there's always other ways of saying something, I suppose. So, folks, if you do have any questions for me tonight on Arrakis itself, all things Dune as usual, science fiction. I think there's a few interesting things in this that you'll get that, and we've pointed this out to you before, that Frank Herbert's a wee bit deceptive when it comes to telling you where his ideas come from. And this is, I suppose, in this episode we have the second really good example of him pretending not to really know what a source is for a certain thing, and actually I think I've evidenced it quite well. If you look at the footnotes. Evidence that quite well that he actually did know entirely. Oh dear. Brad has a range of emoticons which looks really angry, followed by a lot of flooding of tears. General all-round poor water discipline there, Brad, followed by anger again. Yeah, I'm sorry about that, my friend. Yeah, maybe something will work out. It seems that there's a number of people getting to see wee sort of advanced showings in America and stuff. So maybe something like that will happen in Australia. But it's a massively disparaging date, isn't it? You'll get there, Brad. Don't worry. You'll see it soon. As I said, we're off to see it on Thursday coming on the 21st. But we are still. All the COVID restrictions have been pretty much lifted completely, which is quite worrying, to be honest. But we've got the right kind of seats, and we're hoping that it's looking like a very, very empty cinema from our point of view, which is what we want. I'm happy enough as somebody point if there's a few people in the cinema, but it's nice to get it to yourself, I think. But there we go. So I'm ranting about my dastardly plans to get a cinema all to myself. How greedy of me, So there we go. So yeah, there's a few of Frank's ecological ideas starting to surface here within Arrakis. And of course, we have this book dedicated to dry land ecologists. And I'd argue, even before I'd read Dune, that I'd heard of Dune in terms of being a science fiction book. But what's it about? Well, it's a kind of an ecological thing, was what I would have been told. So I've always been aware that it had a link to ecology before I read it. It's my doggy barking in the background. There's Babs. Hello, Babs. How are you keeping? You okay? Thanks for joining us. So we're just getting started, Babs, as usual, just all saying hello. The gang's all here, I think. We have a few other regulars, don't we? I think it's really nice. So yeah, any questions tonight, folks, on Arrakis, Dune, desert planet, Rakis, etc., or even on the ideas on ecology? David says, won't be able to chat much tonight as I'm prepping for a tabletop game starting soon. I'll be listening. Love the topic tonight. To wallow in the complexity of ecology. That's the good stuff. Well, I hope the game goes well, David. Yeah, ecology, complexity is very complex. So we get a couple of different opinions on what ecology is in there. Arguably, it's a bit of in its current state, I'd say it's a bit of a mishmash of science and history to a degree. And history in the sense of inquiring into things, but I think there's a lot of other sciences that are contributing to ecology in the sense that if you want to be a particularly good ecologist and have that kind of long-term thinking, I think you need to be a really good multidisciplinarian, to be honest. Brad says, it does seem that at one stage there was interest by the Empire to change the environment in Dune, but it was discarded by the book Dune, with the research stations falling into decline. Does it explain why they changed? We've got some stuff coming up on the research stations. And I'm trying to think that I think the botanical research stations, if I remember correctly, are there at a certain point, I think, before humans arrive on the planet. Or not, sorry, not before humans arrive on the planet, but I'm trying to think. I think they've been there for a while. I must have a wee look into that. I think I have actually, Brad. I think we've got some stuff coming up on the botanical testing stations when we look at Pardo and Leah kinds, but off the top of my head, I can't quite remember. Let me have a wee quick look at the first Dune book. Let me see. Because that would be probably in the appendices. But the botanical testing stations are quite interesting. Let's have a wee look. Only 3 mentions of the word botanical in Dune. He thought of the film book Yui had shown him Arrakis, His Imperial Majesty's desert botanical testing station. It was an old film book from before discovery of the spice. Names flitted through Paul's mind, each with its picture imprinted by the book's mnemonic pulse. So saguaro, burrowbush, date palm, sand verbena, evening primrose, barrel cactus, incense bush, smoke tree, creosote bush, kit fox, desert hawk, kangaroo mouse. So the fact is that it says that the film book is there from before the discovery of spice. Now, what that means in terms of when they started appearing, said that among the Fremen that there were more than 200 of these advanced bases built here on Arrakis during the botanical testing station period. All supposedly have been abandoned, but there are reports that they're sealed off before being abandoned. Excuse me. And then that's the last remnant there. It could be remains of a botanical testing station. So yeah, they're part of a bit of a mystery within Dune. So before discovery of the spice doesn't mean, before the worms are there. It just means before the discovery of they start mining it, I suppose. But who knows why they shut them down? They're a bit of a mystery. And they're kind of these bases that allow the Fremen to go about their work because the Emperor's forgotten about them. So yeah, I think it's just one of those little mysteries. But that was the bit that they've been there for a while, and I was thinking, have they been there since before the Fremen? But clearly not. Excuse me. Hello, Noodles. Sorry, it's my other dog in. Let me just catch up with you guys there. So, yeah, why did they change? Does it explain why they changed? I don't think so, Brad, to answer your question. But as I said, we have a wee bit coming up on that, and I might have looked at that in a bit more detail. But that's just a wee quick sort of search there to see what it provides, Ether Prime says, I'm mostly listening tonight. I'm airbrushing and drawing at the moment. Excellent. David says, a quick correction on the Solomon Kane quote I gave last night. It's from the story Red Shadows. I believe I gave the name of the collection the story was in. Oh, right. I think so. I think yeah, I remember what we were talking about. Yeah. Was it recently talking about, was it Black Agnes or something as well? Was it some character I think you were talking about? Yeah, yeah. I must get, as I said, I've got a collection of the Conan stories. It's that black leather bound, quite thick hardback book, and I've got the same kind of edition of the Lovecraft. But what would be really nice would be an actual matching kind of stuff like Solomon Kane. A good selection of Robert E. Howard's other works. I think would be great. I must have a wee nosy in the bookshop. Chris, hi Chris. Then they're ancient and predate such things as the guild navigators. No, I don't think so. The testing stations, you've got to try and get a figure on it, I suppose. But if they're on the planet during the Empire, but prior to spice production beginning, and I imagine that spice production, etc., is all post Butler and Jihad, post forming of the guild, post CET. But then we have quite a long period of time, so we don't really know. It is interesting to think about how long has the empire been addicted to spice. And again, I dare say that there's possibly an answer to that with maybe the Brian Herbert, Kevin J books, etc. But yeah, well, again, mysteries. There's lots of mysteries around the worms, and I think it's attached to Earth as well. So they're old, Chris, but I don't think they predate such things as the guild navigators. And of course, the navigators, I think, as far as I know, learn how to navigate with it's the spice that allows them to do it. I think the spice must appear at a certain point, but outside of Frank Herbert's universe, I don't know. Souppot says, "Hi, Room. Hi, Souppot. Thanks for joining us. Chatting about all things ecological Arrakis itself tonight." And the ideas of Frank Herbert's ideas that are kind of he's using the planet to kind of educate us with, if you like. So yeah, thanks for joining us. Bob says, is it possible they were there to monitor how well the newly planted worms were progressing? Yeah, it's a good one, Babs. I still have a theory that I think that the worms came from Earth, and whatever happened to Earth was because of the worms. But it's open to interpretation. It's one of those ones that we can all have a wonder about. So the point is that they make is that they're all shut down, and it seems that they're shut down in a. It seems that they're shut down in a. Maybe it's the discovery of the spice that makes them shut down. Let's close this up and keep it hush hush, if you see what I mean. Brad says, you think the discovery of spice would be a greater inducement to make the planet nicer for the water soft empire. Yeah, unless right at the beginning that there is somebody who understands the relationship between the worms and the spice, and therefore they don't want the planet changed in any way, if you see what I mean. But if I'd imagine if there's one planet in the universe that's home to the one commodity that everybody wants, you might try and make it a bit more habitable, I suppose. There we go. Neil Padva. Hi, Neil. Unexplored plotline, maybe. Connection between the guild refusal to allow satellite. I was actually just thinking about that. It's a good point, Neil. The implication being the guild were being paid off by an unknown source. Yeah. So that it does kind of make sense that at some point you think that, hey, there's it's kind of a bit like somebody finding a big plot of gold or something and kind of, no, let's not tell anyone, that kind of thing, I think. But yeah, we have a bunch of unexplored plot lines, and I think fundamentally what about the worms, Earth, and I think there is a connection personally. But and again, I only really go with the Frank Herbert books, I suppose. But yeah, absolutely. Being the guild were being paid off by an unknown spice, and of course they take the bribes from the Fremen as well, just to not really provide any is it weather control, weather satellites, this kind of thing. Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know, maybe somebody who has read the Brian Herbert, Kevin J. Anderson books, are there answers to these questions, like where did the worms come from? Because as I said, I would be ignorant of these kind of things, But yeah, we've got some interesting points tonight. Let's see. Any connection to Jacurutu? Spelling Neopatha mentioned implications of a guild payoff. Thought I remember something about the smugglers paying them off. David says if they were pre-spice, then it'd be pre-guild. I'd have thought, yeah. Well, not necessarily. The schools of thought are formed out of the Butlerian jihad. And again, I know that there's Brian Herbert books, but it's not. We're never quite kind of given a sense of that too much in the Frank Herbert books, Any connections to Jack Russo? Not sure, to be honest. The thing I get about the forbidden the siege that's the problem with the Fremen with these people is if I'm remembering correctly, it's not that they don't take people's water, but they take they were kind of the idea is I think that they're like but like cannibals. They took each other's water, but not necessarily when it was for the good of the tribe. I think so. If I'm remembering that right, the Jack Russo from Children of Dune, isn't it? I think. Babs says they became shut down because the worm had established and were no longer needed. Yeah, or possibly, Babs, maybe it's that they shut them down because they started to attract worms. If you see what I mean. Who knows? It is. As Sootpot says, it's interesting. We could have a good wee speculation about, and all of this stuff's absolutely critical to Frank in educating us about ecology. There's things that he talks about there, the Tansley effect. And if you check my footnotes, you'll see that's a real person as well. He's referencing and referring to real world people who work in certain fields. If you see what I mean, he's hoping that maybe you'll go, I wonder, is that a bit like Peter De Vries? De Vries, there's a lot of names that are quite designed to point you at certain historical people or scientists and so on in the Dune universe. I better catch up here. Let's see. Neo Pathos says, David, good theory of the Fremen keeping prying eyes out. Yeah. So it could be a question of have the guild been keeping, just making money by keeping all sorts of people unaware of what's going on over the. It could be quite interesting that everybody's paying off the guild, if you see what I mean. They could be taking bribes from all sorts of people to not show other control and just keep them quiet and not do it, I suppose. David says, I love the idea that the worms came from Earth. I was kind of running with that, David, based on their physiology and what we were chatting about the other night, that they're a worm, they're an animal plant hybrid. And, we were talking about what kind of life form they were, and that they seem very much engineered to do, well, in that sense, to do a very certain job, I think, So it's quite possible that they came from a lab on Earth. And the Empire of a Thousand Worlds in Dune, Earth's only mentioned once in Dune. Where is it? What's going on? It is interesting. Where do the worms come from? Because I've done the full run on the 6 books, and I think you'll see some of the diagram in the next one. But the diagram's on my community page on the YouTube channel. So if you want to look at the life cycle of the worm as an introduced species, unfortunately, where does it come from? So I just start my diagram there and have I don't know. So a full read of Dune will not reveal where the worms come from at all, sadly. Chris says, I much prefer the way that Dune allows this kind of discussion to a plethora of guidebooks filling in Frank Herbert's gaps. There's definitely the Fremen the Fremen, sorry, Sootpot, the Fremen do pay off the guild in Dune. Yeah, that's right. We're just kind of speculating on how many people have been paying off the guild for forever. Is there other people that might be paying off the guild as well, I suppose? So again, it's just idle speculation. But yeah, it is the interesting thing about the Dune series, Chris, is that Frank doesn't give us everything, and he's very good at dangling and baiting us and giving us some information. He does want you to go and work at this in your own way, to put a bit of thought into it, But he will not give us our answers all the time, and trust me, I've gone looking for them. So that is the great thing, guys. You don't have to go looking if you want in certain ways. I've already done the work for you in some areas, but what we know is what we know, and then the rest of it is kind of up for us to have a think about. And it's a bit like when we talk about, for example, the other memory, the Baron Vladimir Harkonnen appearing in Ali's other memory. There's a range of possibilities there, and to be honest, I know I have mine, and etc. But all of them are valid, and we can't go, no, that's nonsense. That doesn't make any sense because you go, actually, no, it does. So that's what I think is great about June, that we can sit and have a chat about it. I can say, here's my opinion. Here's, we can look at the facts, and then it still allows us to bring our opinions and go, yeah. And it's hard to shoot down anybody's opinions about Dune, if you see what I mean, which is what's great about it. We can all have a chat about it, but every time somebody says something, we're all going, yeah, hadn't thought of that. That's a good idea. Yeah, and so that's the thing. It just, whenever we have natters about this, it seems to just bring more ideas to the party rather than definitively ruling anything out, which I think is nice. It's a pleasant change, I think. Hmm. Soup pots and smugglers with the front. Yes, indeed. And all just paying off with the idea is it's bigger and bigger, increasing bribes, isn't it? The bribes keep getting more and more. David says it makes sense. The Fremen would have their own access to spice in enough quantities to do so. Yeah, so the Fremen, if you understand the economics of the Imperium, the Fremen are pretty wealthy. In fact, they're incredibly wealthy. Um, it's what Here's another thought exercise for you, that the Fremen could have simply presented their melange to the guild, sold it, and bought such a vast amount of was it chome stocks, that they could have probably bought the empire and not had to do any fighting at all. Just, if they had the wealth and they have the might to back it up, I suppose. It's a very interesting point, that I just considered it. Yeah, Sootpot saying yes. Children of June, the cast out. Jackie Ruto, yeah. Neil Padfa says, I love the unstated undercurrents in June, that there is more going on than we get a glimpse of without comment. It was what I enjoyed about June when I discovered it as a teenager. Yeah, it's the plans within plans within plans, and sometimes they're within a plan as well, aren't they, Neil Padfa? Um, it does work deliberately that way, and you have these iterations of these themes and character, and even details. I know of is it Leto knowing of a trap and walking into it, Paul knowing of a trap and walking into it, Leto the second knowing of a trap and walking into it. We keep getting these reiterative themes, excuse me, and motifs, not just within character and action, I think. And it is, as you say, unstated, very, very subtle. And what I particularly like about, I think I've said this before, is that there's something about Frank Herbert's writing, sorry, that he actually gives us a lot of foreknowledge. And you think, in the hands of a poorer writer, that would just wreck a book, wreck the story for you, but it doesn't. It's like a tease, if you like, and we're also powerless to act on this foreknowledge. And yeah, we see things that the characters do not. We are prescient to a degree, if you see what I mean, Neil. And yeah, I totally agree. There's a lot of subtlety in Frank Herbert's Dune series, a lot more than you'd even think if you're thinking, oh, there's tons of subtlety in there. If you go looking for it, um, it's quite incredible book, I think. David says, I agree. There's so much there to come back to. Dune and its sequels are probably the books I've reread the most. Probably agree there. I think I'm trying to think of how. Oh, no, no, no. I've read Aesop's. Yeah. There's a few books that I've read a lot more often than Dune, I suppose, but not many. But Aesop's Fables would be a book I read every year, pretty much. Yeah, but yeah, and again, we talked about the size of these books. That if they were flawed, you wouldn't get past them twice, would you? But they're all quite good. We keep coming back to them over and over again. And I'm just wrapping up June now, loving it. And a book I've read so many times, it still feels quite fresh to me. And I'm actually really looking to tearing into the appendices to refresh my memory of those. And yeah, there's the Van Gogh painting from Earth, says Soup Pot. Neil Papa says, I agree. The Fremen, therefore, were using the guild as a front protecting them. Yeah, everybody's using everybody to a degree in that universe. Brad says, yay, 20 minutes in, and we've stuck to topic. Must be a record. Yeah, it's. I don't know. Sometimes, Brad. I mean, I'm here for questions and answers on, and that was the way it was sort of started. As I'll answer any questions and answers on tonight's episode. And I didn't know how else to do this. So it's I just thought we'd go for it. So it's working grand, and it's nice to stay on topic. And I think some of the things that we do set up are a bit more interest to the Dune fans than other things. But for example, the first three episodes we look at the ecology. We're looking at contemporary writings, and then we had a wee quick look at the article that Frank wrote just to get all this started. So it's not that kind of stuff's not always interest to a Dune fan, I suppose, but it's really kind of trying to point you to the way of how Frank works and how he operates. And now we're hitting the ecology full on, and there's an awful lot there. And again, I don't know how many of you consider yourselves ecologically literate. If you see what I mean, it's an interesting question. And do you consider yourself ecologically literate because you've read the Dune series? Interesting. I'm just going to catch up, folks, because there's a lot of text here. So let me. But yes, 20 minutes, Brad. It's pretty good. Anybody got any questions on ecology or Rakis, etc.? Far away. That plus OM proves it exists. Gotcha. OM. Not too sure what that acronym means there. Suit pot. I hope you guys can. Sorry, but I'm not very up on modern acronyms, I have to say. Proves it exists. Gotcha. It sort of feels like when I come back to Dune, says David, at different points in my life, suddenly some new thread I hadn't noticed before reveals itself, enriching the work. In a way, the ecology of the galaxy is directly affected by the ecology of Arrakis, since Melange has become so integrated, it's part of the galactic ecology. Fremen Guild Alliance question mark. Yeah. Well, as I said, I think the Fremen could have bought the Empire. If money is power in the Empire, which it is, and if you'll hear the Baron explain why they were able to take out the Atreides, it's simply cash. We've got more of it, and that gives us more ships, more troops, more weapons, more. Money is power, and it's all to do with money equates to Melange, equates to Chum Company directorships and stocks and stuff like that. And yeah, so and you even get a sense at the very end of June that all the noble houses are there because the guild has massively cut the price of travel, hasn't it? It's pretty much if anybody wants to come to Arrakis now, or tickets 10p. So everybody turns up at the end of June looking sort of possibly to pick the place clean over what's going to happen. Or Neil Papa says, or as they say, have a plan or become a part of someone else's. I always need a plan B. That's what and a plan C and a plan D. Let me just, sorry, I've lost the thread here a wee second, folks. Let me just catch up and see where we're at. But yeah, we're staying on topics still, Brad, actually, still on ecology. Neil Papa says, there's Keith. Right, I've mapped Keith where Keith is. Hello, everyone, says Keith. Hi, Keith, thanks for joining us. Ether Prime says, the most shocking moment for me in all the books was the destruction of Arrakis. Yeah, I kind of was, what? And it does, in terms of the ecological theme, kill it stone dead, I think. And it is a surprising moment. I think the planet is as much a character as anyone else in the Dune series. The only difference is I don't think there's a copy of Arrakis in the wee null entropy tube around Skytail's neck, Sootpot says, I've returned to the gore. Oops. Do you mean the gore stories? I've never read them, Sootpot, but I understand they're about saucepot, if you know what I mean. Sorry, but I've seen the Oliver Reed film where Ollie strumps again, as I used to say. Yes, Keith, we're actually still on topic, though we have quickly drifted there. But we've managed to stay on topic, as Brad was pointing out, Keith, all the way down till now. So there we are. So any questions on... Hi, Karen. Thanks for joining us. Karen's just joined us there as well. Anybody got any questions on Arrakis, ecology, the ecology, anything to do with Frank's ideas there? I can probably even recap a few of them for you in a wee minute, actually. Fire away, folks. Give us your comments and questions. To expand on the Fremen Guild relationship, Brad says the Fremen could have paid off the Guild for no one to go there and let the Guild deal spice to the Empire, leaving the Fremen alone or using the Guild as their puppet. Yeah, so like a middleman. But it's to do with, well, ultimately, still an empire, Brad, I suppose. But yeah, it's a part. Yeah, you actually wonder why the Guild I suppose there is a power grab going on in Dune, isn't there? And it's most likely that everybody else is going to have a go as well, I think. Yeah, so why not? But I think certainly with the idea of an empire is basically want all money to flow in one direction and one ideology to flow out in the other, I suppose. But yeah, interesting. Yeah, and the whole it's not too well explored, is it? But the whole relationship between the Guild, the Fremen, the Smugglers, and as I said, if the Guild are just using the Fremen, they just charge them more and more Melange, and the Fremen no bother. We've got a whole planet. Giant worms make this stuff every day. It is quite interesting. But so the Guild arguably should be the richest in terms of Melange. After the Fremen. But yeah, there is an economy to the. Somebody was pointing out there just a wee second ago to make sure I give the right. It was David was pointing out that the ecology of the galaxy is directly affected by the ecology of Arrakis, and there is an ecology to that, but there's an economy to it as well. And we were talking about the meaning of those two words. It's interesting. But yeah, what's going on with the Guild, and arguably in terms of what we're led to understand what you can do with money, then the Guild or the Fremen should be able to deal with pretty much any opponent. The only thing is that the Fremen are stuck on the planet, I suppose. Good point, Brad. Thank you. Neo Padva says other books with hidden depths you discover upon second or third reading. Catch-22 for me. Very clever book, and anything by Cormac McCarthy. Catch-22 is quite good. I grabbed a wee pile of books today, actually, and brought them up from my dad's. I'm sitting down here. It's just Kurt Vonnegut's Slaughterhouse Fives there. But I'll show you what I mean. I just oh, sorry, I shouldn't shout too loud there. I was going past the microphone. But I think I was telling you about some of the authors we're going to look at, and that's James Tiptree. Can nearly say it. Sorry, James Tiptree Jr., who's Alice B. Sheldon. And I bought this recently, and I just found this in a box, and it turns out I've had it for years. So bit of a waste of money. Actually, I don't like doing that, but there we go. But yeah, the multi-layered book. I'd argue that Dan Simmons' books work well that way. Very a lot of depths within a second reading, especially if you depends on how much you understand the intertextuality within his book. So if you're familiar with what he's referring to at the beginning, it's one thing. If you're not, then the second read, it's very insightful. And I'd argue the Book of the New Sun is like that as well, actually. But yeah, there's some books that are really rewarding on a second or third read, but I'd also argue all of Philip K. Dick's stuff falls into that category. And if you ever read anything by Alfred Bester, you probably should read it twice, because he's probably tricked you at some point in the book. Yeah. But yes, it's great to find books, but I think there's a lot of it. It depends on how an author goes about their business, if you see what I mean. Ether Prime says, yes, I do believe I'm ecologically literate. No, not because I read Dune, but because Dune sparked the interest in me. Other memories, what you meant earlier, Sootpot, thank you. Plus, it proves it exists. I got you. Yeah, it's I don't know the timeline of the Dune. Again, there's an alternative timeline. I must have a wee look at it in Willis E. McNally's Dune Encyclopedia, which I haven't had a nosy at. I know it's sitting on the shelf there, but I've just had a wee flick through it to show you some of you yesterday. I think it was the day before. but must have a nosy, wee nosy at it, you know. Anyone read the Whipping Star Frank Herbert books, especially the last? I've got the whole lot over here. Ether was that asked that? Sorry, hang on. My screen scrolled there just as I was reading. Oh yes, we were asking, or do we believe if we're ecologically literate? Right. Karen says, think any degree of ecological literacy I've gotten to before reading Dune, but it's probably what made me appreciate Dune once I did read it. On topic? No way. Do apologise? I must do better to keep us on topic. Ether Prime says, I have a question for everyone. Which state of Arrakis is the true form to you? Pre-form garden, post-warm desert, post-God Emperor garden, or post-God Emperor desert? Oh, you've left out bits of rubble floating in space, Ethan. Keith saying, not ecologically specifically. I think I'm more scientifically literate than most people. Excellent. Pre-worm, not pre-form. Sorry, pre-worm garden. Yeah, interesting. I think I just think of it as a desert planet, the Arrakis from Dune, I suppose. Brad says, post-worm desert. For me, it's the way it was when I started. David says, regarding the topic of the destruction of Dune, that was shocking to me too. Ether, I also thought it was interesting how Genie Prime became a focus in the late novels. Yeah. And anybody who read the Whipping Star Frank Herbert books, especially the last, Sootpot's asking. I've read through a whole lot of his stuff, and I have a whole pile of that there. I'm trying to think. Whipping Star, is that the ones that? There's one that leads to there's the Pandora trilogy, which I have downstairs actually. But I'll let everybody answer that one, Sootpot. My favorite one, I don't know if I've said his other books, would be The Dragon in the Sea, which is also known as Under Pressure. Ether Prime says, yes, I love that story. David Segovia, hello, sir. Nice to hear you again. Hi, David. Sootpot says, humanity is the ecological force invading the universe. Chris Gibson says, no plant survives contact with the enemy. That's a good quote. Who's that? I've never known who said that. Von Malta the Younger, I think. Excellent. Everybody has a plan till they get punched on the nose, says Mike Tyson. Oh, dear. Keith Combs says, I think the Guild thought that their monopoly on space travel puts them in control by default. The great houses harvesting spice just who they contract to do it for them. The Guild got complacent. Dosari Barrier, it says Sootpot. In answer to your question, Keith, or your comment there, I think, yeah, that there's a number of groups who operate as the power behind the throne, if you see what I mean. I'd say that the Guild definitely operate in that way, and the Bene Gesserit operate in that way. And for a number of other groups, they would like to be in that position, I think. But I think in Dune, you've got the Emperor, and I think who's going for the throne? Probably, I think there's the Guild, the Atreides, the Harkonnen, the Bene Gesserit are definitely going for the throne. They're going for it all, I think. And that's what the Kwisatz Haderach's for. And we don't have the Bene Chilax in the first book, which is interesting, you know. Let's just catch up. When you just show both covers of those books, made me hate modern book cover artwork. So boring, static, bland. Oh, I have to tell you. Well, this is a wee series of books. Now they're all like this, I think. Let me show them to you. But I got a book voucher, and as much as I like books, there's a wee collection of books that Penguin have brought out, and I'll show you the covers. There we go. That's Trafalgar by Angelika Gorodischer. The Hair Carpet Weavers by Andreas Eschbach. There we go. We've got now I read this one first. Actually, this is why I bought them. 1 billion years to the end of the world. The Strugatsky Bars. That's a good one. It's a short wee book. Quite not an easy read, but a good read. Dimension of Miracles by Robert Sheckley. And of course, this one, 10,000 Light Years from Home. So the idea was it's a range of science fiction writers from around the world that I wasn't familiar with, and I've been wanting to read James Tiptree Jr.'s collected short stories for a long time. Really want to read them all at once, and it was just sad really quite silly that I've actually, which is a much nicer cover, isn't it? A proper piece of sci-fi art. Introduction by Harry Harrison. 15 fascinating voyages through space and time. So yes, I don't know who the artist is there. It looks like Chris Foss. But yeah, it's a old and new, isn't it? Bit of a difference. I love a good book cover. Books need to sing out to you from a bookshelf, if you see what I mean. But yeah, I was trying to get my. I've been trying to have after what we talked about last night, folks, about the Elric books. I've been decided to. I need to get the two books that I'm missing, and I'm trying to get the ones that actually match the covers I have, which are the quite old ones. They're really nice, you know. Let me just catch up a wee bit, folks. So, but yeah, I actually must bring all the Frank Herberts down and have a run through them with you. I'll tell you what I do have, guys. I'm going to throw this up on a program. I've done a wee kind of slideshow for the people at the university. It was a presentation, and it covers all of his books, and just really, it's like a pointer for me to have a wee chat with him. But I was going to try and incorporate it into an episode if I could. Or maybe just put it up for you is actually just saying it's my slideshow. Why not, I suppose. Let's have a wee look. Again, it's that kind of thing that we can't put certain documents up with a YouTube channel to kind of add a level of support to it, if you see what I mean. It's a bit sad. We can put pictures up on a couple of other things and have a poll. But there we go. Let me just catch up again. Don't any barrier. I mean, yeah, boring static bland. They're not the nicest covers, but they make a nice wee set. But they're cheap paperbacks, so I was able to buy 5 of them, where I could have bought a couple of other books. So it's a good wee haul of books. I think I'm looking for. They're meant to be quirky science fiction books. The bulk of them. That was kind of what sold me on them. Yeah, I think it's definitely Desert Worm Planet Arrakis. If Arrakis was an actor, I'd like their whole body of work, but they'd be the best. Be that one film from the 50s, I always say, is his best work. It's a good way of putting it. But let's see. Okay, Neopathic. Okay, so where did the worms come from, or were they native all along? No, Neo, they're not native, not at all. They are an invasive species. We don't know. Simple as that. We can speculate. I've done the work, and we don't know. But my guess is Earth. Because of the incredible similarity to the life cycle and physiology of the sea lamprey to the worm. So yeah, I think that's the animal that they're based on anyway. As to what plant they're based on, I'm not sure, but yeah, I guess it's one of those things that we'll never know. Soup pots. Apologies when the keyboard is not my friend and I type like an ass. Do not worry about it, soup pot. Sometimes it's hard. Try to figure out what's being typed anyway. So we'll get there in the end. Don't worry. Everybody mistypes. My hands are a complete mess. And I've got a big ergonomic thing way up here, so I'm bound to mistype. If you see, I mean, I'm just going to get some of those precious fluids, folks. Dr. Strangelove reference. That's better. I should just drink more when I'm talking to you guys. It would help. Okay, so where did all? Oh yeah, Keith Combs' first 2 books in Pandora trilogy are great. The first more so. The third is meh. Oh, I have them downstairs actually. I'll bring them up for now to have a look at them. That's the books that he wrote with. It's Bill Ransom, isn't it? Yeah, they're meant to be a kind of. I don't know. There's a way of looking at that. I suppose there is meant to be a way of looking at them in relation to Dune. David says, we talked about that a bit. It isn't clearly stated in the Herbert novels, but the theory I like is that they came from it. I'm glad you like the theory, David. It's mine, I think. But it makes sense. And the other thing that makes sense about it, I suppose, Neil, is that all of the species on Arrakis are introduced, and they're introduced from Earth. As far as they're all real Earth species. I give you a wee list of them earlier. So they're all desert, survival specialists, shall we say? Sootpot says Dragon and Sea and Destination Void have a lot in common. I can't remember Destiny. I'm going to have this is the thing. I only skimmed those because at the point when I was starting this work, Sootpot, I was actually doing this on the works of Frank Herbert. And and at a certain point, I had to make a decision to cut all of his other books out of it. It was pretty quick, actually. There's a lot of the Dragon and Sea in Dune. They have an enormous amount in common with the Dragon and Sea and Dune. Um, Destination Void. What's that one? Right, hang on. Goodness gracious. Whipping Star, Destiny, the Sari Experiment, White Plague, Heaven Makers, God Makers, Direct Descent, Hellstorm's High, The Green Brain. What's the one we're looking for? Oh, I bet it's the one that's not here. I bet it's downstairs. Destination Void. I've got the right glasses on. Are you there? No, it must be downstairs. Sorry about that. I must have a wee look. I need to refresh my memory about the Soot Pot. Been a long time since, and I read a chunk of Frank Herbert, and it would all been about 11 years ago all at once. So they tend to, unfortunately, whenever you read like that, if it's one author, they tend to blend a bit together in my memory. So I have a hard time separating which book is which. But I'll have a wee nosy and see. I would have made notes on it and stuff, so I must check my slideshow. I'll get back to you on that one, Sootpot. But there's an awful lot of the Dragon and the Sea that has incredible amount of similarities to Dune itself. And I'd argue that there's some stuff in The Green Brain, which is his third book. So he publishes Dragon and the Sea, Dune, and then The Green Brain. Particularly with characterization stuff, you'll start to see sort of patterns to Frank's writing, especially the female characters. Female characters in the first three books are pretty much the same, in their physicality, etc. That's a mystery, not native. Yeah, it's so. Alas, as I said, unless Brian and Kevin J. Anderson answered that one, it is a mystery. But I think Earth is where the worms are from, and if that's the case, by the way, guys, then it would answer the question: what happened to Earth? I think. But we get our mysteries in Dune. That's why we all keep coming back to it, I think, as we keep saying. Keith Kolb says the Atreides are also going for the throne, yes, just in a more straightforward, noble manner, thus ended up on the wrong end of the Sardaukar raid. Yeah, they're going for it the same way the Baron's going for it as well, though, Keith. It's wealth that'll get them there, and the Melange will provide that wealth. And a marriage, obviously, as well. Ether Prime says, the reason I asked that question is because in correlation to Earth, which state do you think is the true form of Earth? Pre-Ice Age, 1, 2, 3, 4, post-Ice Age, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think the Earth is an ever-evolving and ever-changing planet. I don't think it has a true form. Ether, it's you never stand in the same river twice kind of thing. And you're never the same person any given second. Your molecules are different, etc. Just my opinion. Big molten blob before it coalesces. David says, do I recall an Atreides raid on some Harkonnen spice stores on another planet after they took control of Arrakis? I don't remember that, David. It might be a Brian Herbert thing. I'm just reading Jim, but it's possible. But I don't recall that one. Maybe somebody else could answer it for you. Sorry about that. Sootpot says book cover and LP cover should draw you in. Absolutely, it's great book art and cover, LP cover. I love it. Whenever I returned back to Northern Ireland and moved down to Korea, helped them move house basically because they decided to retire. And I had a record collection. My folks put all my records in the conservatory while we moved everything into the house. And guess what happened? They all melted in the heat. I've sort of about 30 LPs and singles left. One of them is the Queen. Is it News of the World? The big robot cover that opens up. It's beautiful, But yeah, always been a good art, and it should attract you to a book or LP or film or anything like that. As long as it's not too deceptive, I think. There's a lot of books used to have really, especially in films, very deceptive covers. David Segovia says, it seems to me that the true form of Rakis was a preformed garden devastated by worms and merciless extraction of the spice during time. Karen says a Dune PowerPoint in this era. No way, Karen. It is a thing from the past, a bit like me. It's an old thing. I just happen to have a copy of it. It'll look awful. It'll look very 2006, I think. Um, yeah, PowerPoints. PowerPoints disappeared. I don't know. Suppose everybody's making videos these days. Um, yeah, the Arrakis and we get a sense that it was a oceanic. It had seas, oceans, and was some kind of what we would consider a garden world. And it is the introduction of the worms that turns that planet into Dune. That turns Arrakis into Dune, really, if you like. But the big question is, where did the worms come from? Are they accidentally introduced or deliberately introduced? Is it to create spice? It's so many questions to ask with that, and it's just a simple mystery, isn't it, in the Dune universe? And it just starts pinging all sorts of different. You know, can we have the crust? Yeah, I'll see what I can do. I've got this kind of thing with me guys. It's always about trying to find time to learn, and I've so little time. But I've got this kind of thing software called OBS Studio, and I believe I could do live streams and bring stuff up on the screen for you at the same time if that was possible. But I'll maybe incorporate it into a video if I can. Um, but yeah, I've got a wee website that I'd like to get up and running if I can. Again, finding time to do it all. I tend to write my own code by hand, so. Um, but well, yeah. Hopefully soon enough, folks. When I get a little bit of time, get past this little run of June and settle back into making a video. I'm probably going to do a live chat once a week or something. But we'll see if we can get a wee website up where we can any kind of materials like this. That if you're interested, we've already talked about the June Encyclopedia, for example. And yeah, I'd like to make some of this stuff available to you if you're interested. I've got quite a lot of material on digital format. Got all sorts. Let's just catch up. Neopapa says that the worms produce a substance so unique and useful to the progress of man, an entire empire becomes centered upon it. It is an allegory for 20th century dependence upon oil. Yeah, it's like actually as it's not an allegory, Neo, because Frank Herbert actually says it's not. It's not an allegory for oil. It is oil. And chom is OPEC. We have the wee quote there, but so it is oil. It's not an allegory in that sense because he's blatantly telling us. It is, but you know what I mean. But yeah, Frank, it's interesting. There's some authors really don't like allegory. I believe that the one author that I think despises allegory is Tolkien. Didn't like it at all. But yeah, absolutely. Melange is oil. Dependence, hydraulic despot, that works on a lot of different levels. It's a drug, isn't it? It's highly addictive. Its withdrawal is fatal. And if you want power over it, you have to go and live on. If you want to own it and control it, you've got to go live on Arrakis, and you'll never leave. Which must be a bit naff if you're living in an empire of 1,000 worlds and you can go on holiday anywhere just by popping up to the nearest guild ship. So the allegory between spice and oil is well established, not so subtle. Yeah, it's not subtle at all. As I said, if I would happily call it an allegory if Frank hadn't come out and just went, "It's not. It is. It isn't. I'm not pretending it's something. It just is it." So it's a full-on absolute statement that I'm not hiding anything at all here. Melange is oil. Chom is OPEC. Yeah, it's very interesting. We'll follow this thread throughout the episodes as well because we looked a wee bit at hydraulic despotism and Frank's attitude to systemic thinking, how it all links together, and again we even see the hero coming in on this, the ecological hero. Yeah, Frank, I think he talks about learning. What does he call it? A science of wisdom or something like that. And I think as much as what Frank's presenting with the Fremen as geomorphic agents, I think that's his solution. We need to become geomorphic agents. We need to stop being such systemic thinkers, understand systems, use them, but that they must kind of work in a certain form of symbiosis, I suppose, with nature. Oh, but not subtle at all, says Super. Not even remotely, I don't think. Um, Keith Kolb says Bill Ramsden wrote the third Pandora book with Herbert's notes. It's weaker and it shows. Oh, there's a comment on it that said it's Bill Ransom saying that Frank Herbert had finished all of his parts of the book before he died. It's we have a quote in there. So whether it's Bill Ransom saying that or it's actually true, I don't know. But I know I don't think I read those three. I think I skimmed them. If you see what I mean, I have the making a decision about how much to do of this man's work and looking at the size of them. And I just really, I very quickly at the end, I just went, Frank Herbert's Dune series rather than, the works of Frank Herbert. One of the things about PhD, I suppose you've got to narrow your focus down quite a lot. Chris Gibson says, book covers, yes. The only one I've kept is GED, and the covers the image of guards carrying lances and pennants. It's a God Emperor of Dune carrying lances with pennants walking into what I presume was Leto's palace. I know the one you mean. I think I have it here. It's quite faded. I think that's a really good picture. That's a Bruce Pennington picture. Yeah, I do not own a set of Dune books that are the same covers. I've never owned one, and I've actually tried several times to get a set of Dune books. That are all the same covers, and I do not own one set at all. There's a real problem. I actually actively trying to get a proper set just to keep within the same publishing regime, if you like, for doing the PhD. David says, "My all." Oh, bye bye, David. Still listening, but time to roll up my sleeves for game prep. No worries, David. Hope you won the game, sir. Keith Kolb says, Destination Void is really the first book in Pandora. I call it the zeroth book as the rest follow on, but are not thematically related. That's correct. I have stuff about, I kind of take you guys, if you look at episode 3, which is just the biography one on Frank Herbert, it takes you on a very quick little literary biography, just through all his different books and when and where they were published. Because we do talk about a lot of his short stories, but he's not very good at writing in the short story format. A lot of his short stories end up as novels, to be honest with you. Neil Papa says that Keith Kolb, it could be a historical commentary on previous economic dependency on particular products. Wheel oil, timber, coal, even ships almost sent the Western economy into decline. Yeah, the hydraulic despotism thing is well known. It's nothing new. And you'll find it plenty much in the ancient world. There's another term for it, sometimes known as Oriental despotism, but it's going on now, and it has been going on a long, long time. So yeah, a comment on previous economic dependency. Why not? Absolutely. But I think the one we have at the minute is oil, and I think that's very much so in terms of the environmental message. I think is the one that we've got atomics and stuff in Dune as well. Let's just catch up. Oh goodness, we're flying away here tonight. Either times when you say that all species in the Empire on Arrakis at least were transplanted from Earth, makes me wonder if Frank didn't believe in alien life in the universe. It's a good point. Well, and again, one of those things, there are no aliens really in the Dune universe, unless you count the sandworm. But what? Just one animal plant species in the entire universe. I think every planet that's in the Empire must have its own localized flora and fauna. If I'd imagine if people are to live on it, so it's just one of those things that he's not really going to go into detail. I think it must be alien plant and animal life, but nothing sentient in that sense. But yeah, so again, probably means that the worms come from Earth, that they're not alien either. And why transplant desert species from Earth? If you see what I mean, just for Arrakis. Neo Papa says the imperial powers in the 17th and 18th centuries openly fight for trading rights for various economic sources. Argue they're still doing it, Neo. There you go. Chris Gibbs says, I'm sure the Atreides raids in June. I'll have a wee look. Is it a raid on Harco? Something like that. Bear with me a wee second. I'll have a nosy. Find raid. Okay. Oh, here we go. First one up. Howard shook his head. We've few men to spare, sire. Use some of Idaho's men, and perhaps some of the Fremen would enjoy a trip off planet. A raid on Gidi Prime. There are tactical advantages to such a diversion, Thufir. You're quite correct. There you go. Found it on the first search. There we go, sir. So you're sure there's an Atreides raid in June? That's because you're quite correct, Chris. There is. There you are. Quite early on, isn't it? It's there you go. And we have a suit pot going, oh my god, no. Not too sure why. Catching up again, folks. Here we go. Keith says, regarding the Atreides going for the throne, they are banking on an increase in wealth from the stewardship of Dune. Absolutely. But the Duke has royal blood that the Baron doesn't. They are more noble in more than one sense. And yeah, in that sense, though, it doesn't really matter. Though it's the marriage connection. I think that the royal blood is one thing, but again, what's so royal about their about their blood? But you're absolutely right. It's the link with marriage, and he is an actual relative. He's a close relative of the emperor. He's a cousin, isn't he, of the emperor? I think. So yeah, I think that again, it's about different paths to the throne, Keith. So I think the Atreides have a reasonably direct one. The Harkonnens route is a generation behind. If you see what I mean, the Baron knows he won't get the throne. Leto might get the throne. Leto the First might get it if he doesn't marry Jessica. So he's holding out for it himself. The Baron knows he won't get it, but Fade. So the Harkonnens thinking about it is slightly longer term. But it's the path of marriage that will get them there, I think, and it's really the wealth. It's about Chome Company directorships. I think that's on there's that particular passage where the Baron's doing a lot of this. There's a couple of passages I think where he's doing a lot of this thinking. I think it's possibly when Fenring's about. Yeah. But I do get what you mean, though. He's not quite the Bond before, but he is a Baron, isn't he? Either Prime is David. I believe it was raids on the Harkonnen spy stores on Arrakis and their smugglers during Duke Leto's reign. Yeah, it is there. It's Leto trying to organise that. Comic Sans for the PP. A history book. Chris Gibson says a history book that covers the conflict between nations over a commodity. Spices, strangely enough, is Nathaniel's Nutmeg by Giles Milton. Oh, that sounds interesting. Oh, we nosy at that. Nathaniel's Nutmeg. Yeah. All sorts of things over the years, I think. It depends on what is your, what's the thing behind your commodity, what's most valuable. The fatal element of spice has lost me for a while. It's a comment. Is it a comment regarding pollution and Earth's death in the oil analogy? That's a good point, Sootpot. It's long-term withdrawal from melange is fatal to everybody. And I think we also get a sense that I was just reading this, that the bit where Paul takes the water of life, and a lot of the Fremen think he's dead. They actually think it's partly because of the saturation of the spice in his diet that he's overdosed on spice. So, yeah, there's a fatal element. You can overdose on spice, first of all. Too much of a good thing. It's utter dependency, isn't it? Some occasionally get somebody going, "Oh, on here, I'd love a sniff of the old spice." Really? Why? You'd have to keep taking it forever. It's a permanent crutch, I suppose. And the price of what we suppose get the sense is it's not. I get this actually. It doesn't seem to be longevity. It's more of a like a potion of youth, I think. If you see, I mean, we're told that the emperor looks about he is about 72 or something. But in actuality, he looks about 25, 30 or something like that. But we're assuming he is 70 odd. And if everybody's taking spice to keep them alive, where's his father, etc., etc., if you see what I mean. So I don't think it stops the aging process quite the way it's suggested in the book. I think it's more of a stops you looking old, but I don't know. It is a tricky thing, but that's it. We get the sense that once you're on the planet, if you're away from the planet long enough to not be able to maintain your spice usage, and I suppose for people where it's been in their food, their water, and their air, that saturation point, probably the effects of that would be quicker. I don't know. So again, why are the Fremen able to? I suppose as long as you can take spice with you. But if you live on Arrakis, you'll never be able to leave the planet unless taking a piece of it with you, if you see what I mean. In regards to pollution, Earth, death, and the oil analogy, mm, we're going to they'll keep taking all the oil until it's all gone. And I suppose the process of creating, complex hydrocarbon takes billions of years, doesn't it? Um, somebody's making that point right after me. Their ether prime soup pot. No, it's about the fact that we've become so dependent on it. Without it, billions would die in a matter of months. Um, you see that's often the case. That's the dependency arguments. I suppose we've got an argument presented in our parliament here lately that you can't have another parliament government system because we can't think of one. I can think of loads, but there you go. But that's it. We can't think of anything better, so we just keep doing what we're doing. Mm. There are older technologies that we've left behind that work just fine. If you see what I mean, we always move forward and dump our older tech, and it's kind of as we go forward now that we start to realize some of the simpler, older fashioned ways of doing things were better. So yeah, the fatal element of spice is interesting, and it makes you wonder why the hell would anybody with a bit of sense. It's not like saying, "Hey, do you want to try cannabis or something?" Where you go, "Oh, I don't know, or maybe I would, but at least it won't kill you." Or okay, I'll try it once, but I don't want to touch it again. What's that? I must keep taking this for the rest of my life, or I'll die. It's not really too well fleshed out, but we do get that and the whole idea of Leto taking his entire family and all there to go for the throne. I don't know. There's something about it that's quite silly. I'd rather rule. If it was up to me and I had charge of Arrakis, I'd rule the place by proxy and do it from a space station. Mm. But I wouldn't park my family there, if you see what I mean. There we go. Nathaniel's nutmeg. That sounds interesting, Chris. Either prime says, let's see. Catching up. David Segovia says, where did we go? Sorry, I've lost your comment there a second, David. Hang on. Every time I click one wee thing, the whole thing flies on down. By the way, how many species exist on Dune besides the sandworms? Maybe in the preformed garden area exists a myriad of species now extinguished by worms. We're told that all the indigenous life is extinct, David. Somewhere in there is so whatever life was on Arrakis is wiped out by the worms. I'm sure there's probably a couple of species that do survive, I guess, but there's a reasonably big list of them there, and is it that wee section where Paul's looking at his film book? If you look at that in June, there's a good list of the animals there, and you'll find a reasonable selection of them in the glossary of terms, etc., in the back of the book. But yeah, things like kit fox, the kangaroo mouse that we all know and love, the jerboa, um, you know, there's a good few of them, and a lot of the animals, the desert hawks and stuff like that. But yeah, I've did do a wee checking on them pretty much. Well, I'll put it this way, David. Whenever there's a bit where I talk about all of them, you'll see a picture of each of these animals as we do the wee list. I think somewhere in one of the episodes. Ether Prime says, so yeah, I'm not sure. Sorry, quickly to answer David's question, I think there's probably a few species that have survived since before the sandworms. And possibly, but I think almost all the species that are mentioned in the Dune book are pretty much transplanted from old Earth. I said on our desert specialist animals. Quite actually a really interesting little bunch of plants and animals. If you actually go and read that list, go to Wikipedia and go through them all and check them out. It's a little very interesting exercise just on some desert plants and animals. It's worth doing. Because I do things like this. You see, I go, let's go look at all the animals that Frank Herbert mentions in Dune. Animals and plants are fascinating. There's so many. Always worth having a look. Let's see. People are against oil truly do not understand anything about how things are made. I think it's about mass production. Really, it's about the quantity. Of course, oil is useful. Of course, it is. We cook with our oil. There's all sorts of oils. It's what we do with it, I think. Chris Gibson says, now you've set a challenge for your listeners, a matching set. You've lost me there, Chris. I'm catching up. History books that cover content. Books to read, possibly. Soup says, I think it's about society's reliance on spice oil. We were stuck on oil when Dune was written, and to wean off it, that would have killed society as it was. David says, okay, had to find legal orders through for to destroy the storehouse against the Emperor's orders using Duncan, Idaho's. I've really got to catch up here, guys. You're way ahead of me. Right, here we go. Going to do a wee run through here. Page 122. I get that, but it's multi-layered. We're talking ecology. We sure are. We've managed to talk ecology for quite a while now, folks, so I'm quite impressed. But that was page 121 on the source I'm reading. The Duke pursed his lips. Storehouses are susceptible to destruction. He raised the hand. That's how it started to speak. Back to work, says David. No worries, David. Brad Rose, yeah, we're part of ecology. Humans are not above it. We're part of it no matter what we think. Absolutely. That's everybody's problem in the Dune universe, isn't it? They don't realize that they're part of what they're doing, and they don't understand as much as what they do affects other people. Every group in the Dune universe is blind to how these things affect themselves. And it works with individual characters too. Sandworms are sentient, but would they be a force of nature like Grendel being mindless? Grendel's not mindless. You took Grendel from Beowulf. Grendel's not mindless at all. Sandworms are sentient, but would they be a force of nature like Grendel being mindless? Oh, I see what you mean. Right. Being mindless. Well, I suppose we have the sandworms there with the pearl of awareness. Yeah, they are sentient, aren't they? You'd have to make that argument. The way they react to certain things, I suppose. Would they be a force of nature? Certainly a force of nature. Not too sure what you mean about Grendel being mindless. Is that when Grendel's injured? Keith Cobb says the Harkonnen thinking to get the throne is more long term in one sense, but they now have first hand knowledge that the Emperor will happily destroy any threat. Makes me think it's still short. So, yes, the Baron's aware of that, I think, Keith. As I recall just reading it recently, he's very much aware that as much as we've done this, now they could do it to us. And I think the Baron, because of that, intends to use that against the Emperor with the minor houses of the Landsrat, I think. But he's playing a dangerous game, definitely. Neo Papa says Count Fenring is an underexplored character worth a book on his own. Reminds me of Walsingham to Elizabeth I. Yeah, he's I think he's one of my, both him and his wife are absolute operators within the Dune universe. We don't get to see him, and he's arguably, based on what we read at the end, the one person that can probably take out Paul, and so therefore arguably is the most dangerous man in the universe. And a real power behind the throne, but not interested in the power. He's very much a Bene Gesserit creature, I think. But him and his wife, I think, are very interesting. Neo Padfa, I think they're cracking characters. I think there's a kind of iteration of their characters in Miles Tegg's parents as well. Is Jaspers and Spice Frank playing with similar themes? Jaspers and Spice. What do you mean by a Jasper? Soot pot. Well, there's Jaspers. What is it? Hang on. See, it might mean something to me. Let me have a look. Oh, okay, doesn't mean much. Jasper is an aggregate of microgranular quartz. Jasper disambiguation. Oh, and I give a name. Permanent freshwater lake. Oh, you've lost me there. I don't know what you mean by Jasper. I thought a Jasper was a nickname for a wasp. Is Jaspers and Spice Frank playing with similar things? Jaspers. You've lost me there, Sootpot. I don't know what Jaspers means at all. Right, let me see. Why settle on plants at all rather than Dyson swarm? Easier to avoid gravity wells, and it seems the guild can't fold space close to all plants, so just have the minimum hashtag of people for resources extraction. It's interesting. Yeah, why aren't they a bit more like the culture? Where did the God Emperor's D-wolves come from? I think they're engineered by the God Emperor, I think, aren't they? Another breeding program of his. I think not just limited to humans. I believe. If I'm very fuzzy on the last three books, guys, in terms of memory. Probably the last four books, but because it's been so long since I've read them. But reading through them again, maybe someone else can answer that. There are better ways to rule Arrakis than from the surface, but the book wasn't written for absolute realism. Otherwise, Fremen would be renowned for strangling victims instead of being knifed. Quite right. It is just the nature of the story and the world that he's constructed. Right, let's see. I'm guessing line of wolves transplanted from old Earth and bred by the second for his needs, says David. I think so, probably something like that. Brad Rose David, yes, it is explained, I think, in God Emperor of Dune. Chris says, sorry, Doc, a matching set of the books of the original series, which you, I see, do not as yet possess. Catching up. There we go. Oh, wait, I've nearly got totally caught up here. Let me see. Hang on. No, I thought. Thanks, Brad. I'll search it after game. Says David. Thanks, Sootpot. Confirming a lot of vague memories here tonight. Sootpot, thumbs up. Scratch the mindless part. I meant more not being very intelligent for Grendel and Sandworms. Grendel's quite a tragic character, to be honest with you. David, when Leto's diary was stolen. Grendel was evil by nature since he's well, they're all descendants of Cain. That's correct. Yeah, point. Very interesting because Grendel and his mother are literally the last descendants of Cain, aren't they? And because of that, they're evil. It's quite an interesting mix of paganism and Christianity in Beowulf. I love Beowulf. Absolutely love Beowulf. Yeah. The Kardashev scale is interesting and rarely explored in science fiction. I'll quickly refresh my memory on that one. Oh, yes. Is that we're type 0? Is that right? Or type 1? Hang on. I remember this. This is from Carl Sagan. I don't know why it's called this. Let me see. Just quickly. The Kardashev scale is a method of measuring a civilization's level of technological advancement based on the amount of energy it's able to use. The measure was proposed by Soviet astronomer Nikolai Kardashev in 1964. Yeah. So I would have read type. Let me just quickly check. Type 1 is what we are. I wonder when I read it, I thought it was type 0, type 1, and type 2, but it's type 1, 2, and 3. Yeah, totally get that. Sorry, yeah, the first time I read about that was in that's Carl Sagan would have introduced me to that. It's Cosmic Connection, I think, is a book. It's really good. It's interesting and rarely explored in science fiction. Accession might do that by Ian Banks. That's what the Accession is, I think. Jasper's from the Santaroga Barrier. Oh, I don't remember that at all. Thank you, Shitpot. Last time I heard the word Jasper, it was the guys what do you call them from? What's the dark? Is it Dark Place? What do you call it? The hospital. The really it's called War of the Wasps. Type in War of the Wasps on YouTube, and you'll see a thing. These guys fighting these giant wasps and helicopters. It's bonkers. It's a British comedy thing. is every time those jaspers crawled into my cider in the park. It's very funny. It's very stupid. It's meant to be a clip from a film that doesn't exist. And it's the guys behind is it Dark Place and that kind of thing. Take that, you Jasper, Matt Berry at his finest. I think all those guys. Yep, maybe watching too much SFI. It's a fungal communal drug type thing. Oh dear, we've got to hate modern search engines. Laughing out loud, trying to look up authors I've forgotten, but they're buried under political propaganda. Just to clarify for others, SFI is Isaac Arthur's Futurism channel. God, I was watching one of his the other night because it recommended by enough people, and he's got interesting stuff. I must 0.7 on the Kardashev scale. Interesting. Yeah, his videos look quite good. Jasper is my favourite character from World of Darkness, Nosferatu. The Landsrad were about type 3 plus in that Kardashev scale. I just thought it's kind of like it's all to do with the energy consumption, isn't it? And I think is it type 1 roughly? Is it getting the type 1's about harnessing the energy of your sun? I think on a daily basis. Is that right? And then it starts going up in scales, but they're quite large scales. Somebody asked about a book that might look at that accession. Is imagine that if we're on scale 1, the culture way, I'd say on that scale probably 3. But the accession that turns up is something that they consider is so far beyond them, and so the book is quite a bit of a race to get to the accession, but the accession itself is very dangerous. But if anybody hasn't read Accession, I highly recommend it, or any of the Ian Banks books. Oh, it's right. Thank you, Keith. So scale type 1 is enough, the same output of the energy of the entire planet, and that's per day, isn't it? So then type 2 must be sun. Would that be correct? The same output of your star on a daily basis, and then I'm wondering what type 3 is. Galaxy, possibly. Local group, I don't know. It would be galactic, wouldn't it? Type 2 is sun. So I'm thinking on scales, it must be galaxy up next one, wouldn't it? Yeah. Carl Sagan's Cosmos is pretty good for stuff like that, but I think it's his book, Cosmic Connection, I think is where I read a lot about this stuff. And I think that's the book, I think, where he it's really interesting because he shows you what our sun might look like from different points of view, from different constellations. And I think it's the book where he also discusses things like floaters and stuff, animals that might evolve in gas giants. And, it's interesting with a lot of his work. As much as it is, he's a scientist and he's out there to promote scientists. And I think that was what's great about Carl Sagan, was he did it so well. He reached out across the world and educated people about science and did it in such a good way. It worked for me, so many thousands of miles away, But yeah, interesting stuff. There's bound to be a few books. I'll have a wee book I must dig out and just sort of keep here. As I've got a wee book. It's called Book of Science Fiction Fantasy Lists. The book, Ether, is that the Cosmic Connection? Let me see. Yes, the other book, The Algebraist, that's right. That's a really good book. Let me see if that's the right one, actually. Bear with me 1 second. Oh. Pretty sure it's here. There it is. Sorry about that, folks. Quest for book. There we go. A lot of these are quite old. I have a whole bunch of Carl Sagan's. My father-in-law gave me one there recently. I got a Brackus Brain. I think. But we've got my Carl Sagan's Cosmos down here is my all time favorite book, believe it or not. But the moons of Barsoom, Science and Intelligence, Venus. Let me just see if I can find it here. Actually, it's got it's like a lot of Carl Sagan books. He brings you so much culture and myth, all of these kind of things to the party. Experiment, science, space exploration as a human and scientific interest. The Venus detective story. Oh, there's all. Let me see. Just very quickly. Cosmic. Hello, Central Casting. Let's try around here. 181. Yeah, you like this book, guys. It's an old one. It's got schematic temperature. What's this? Schematic temperature evolutionary tracks of the planet Earth through geological time. As usual, it's got lots of good photographs and drawings. Some of my best friends are dolphins. Just see if I can see the illustrations I was thinking of. Extraterrestrial life, an idea. Yeah, like theoretical. This is the sort of book it is, like theoretical planetary systems and stuff like this, and exactly what we're talking about here. You know, astro engineering. It's a pity it's a book of a certain age, I suppose. There's stuff in here that you might find in other science fiction. If you know what I mean. I can't see the wee pictures I'm talking about. I wonder is it maybe. Sorry, this isn't making for great conversation, folks. But that's the book. I think it's in that one. It's got all sorts of Carl Sagan stuff like that. But it might be it may be Cosmos I'm thinking on actually. If I can get it Cosmos without wrecking everything. Let me just check rather than send you after the wrong book. Quite possibly is Cosmos, you know. And Cosmos is an amazing book. I mean, if you just get the sense of it, that's just a couple of the pictures there, what's going to happen to the Earth and stuff like that. But I think it possibly travels the backbone of night, traveler's tales, harmony of worlds, etc. But anything by Carl Sagan generally covers a lot of stuff like this. I'll tell you what, guys. I'll have a wee nosy through it and see if I can figure out what it is. But it's one of those two books, I'm pretty sure. So if it's not the Cosmic Connection, it's probably Carl Sagan's Cosmos. Let me just catch up. But we made it an hour before drifting. Well done, everyone. Well, we're still on ecology in a sense. I remember the TV commercials for diabetics being blasted non-stop when I was young. Scientology is influenced by the stuff of Sagan. No. Scientology is L. Ron Hubbard and Dianetics. Damn you, autocorrect. Damn you to hell. Yeah, L. Ron Hubbard's Dianetics becomes. In fact, there's a link kind of between the Van Voghtian hero John W. Campbell and all of that lot. Van Vogt, then Dianetics, and then Church of Scientology. I think Van Vogt got out of Dodge pretty good there, So Scientology is that's L. Ron Hubbard and the Church of Scientology. Carl Sagan didn't have anything to do with science. Not at all. He would have called it absolute nonsense. Carl Sagan is a scientist, and if you don't know much about him, David, check him out on YouTube. He, particularly his work on the space race, but he's really one of those people that brought modern science, our knowledge of the universe, to a modern audience in the 80s, and was like a spokesman for science, and he was absolutely brilliant, a fantastic communicator. But he wrote a science fiction book called Contact, and in his books on science, like Cosmos and these are books to turn the sort of the general public on to all things in the universe and life, and we talked about having the multicultural approach and things that this book introduced me to. The very first page of it is let me just see if I can give you an idea. The very first page in the introduction has quotes from Seneca, as an actual first chapter. Sorry, it's more. Yeah, the first chapter has quotations from the Popol Vuh of the Quiche Maya, the Book of Job, from Blaise Pascal's Pensées, and from T.H. Huxley. And that's off we go. And it's a multicultural, it's a global book. That's what I would say that is, and it's a great book, and it's absolutely loaded with wonderful images. And I know there is it Neil deGrasse Tyson's kind of done a new Cosmos. It's an inferior thing completely. I've got the TV show on DVD. If you haven't seen it, fantastic. Either diabetics needs one. Does indeed. Disturbed. I read Battlefield Earth when I was 14 or so. I think there's somebody at the door. No? Sorry about that, folks. That's my doggy's going nuts. I read Battlefield Earth, says Keith, when I was 14 or so. I remember I thought it was entertaining, but the main character was unrealistically awesome at everything he did. He kind of, I read that actually when I was doing the science fiction course, Keith, and I got it on audiobook on the American cassettes, the old big boxes full of cassettes, because it was a very chunky book, but I found it pretty poor, and it was the first L. Ron Hubbard I'd ever read, and I didn't really bother with anything else like that. Carl Sagan created SETI, says Ether Prime. Yeah, I did a bit of work on the. They used to give away your screensavers for SETI. I don't know if that's still a thing. David saying, final checkout for tonight. Good stuff, and good night, everyone. Thanks, David. Thanks for joining us. Take it easy, sir. I think I'll wrap up about midnight tonight, so we've got about another 15 minutes to go, folks, if you have any more questions. And we've done very well at staying on topic tonight. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of myself as well. L. Ron Hubbard. Sorry, backing up. So, good night, David. Ether Prime says, don't ask me why I mixed those two up, my bad. And L. Ron Hubbard wrote mostly pulp sci-fi, but his To the Stars actually got a Hugo Award nomination, laughing out loud. I couldn't stop laughing at the Battlefield Earth movie. It's like the room of science fiction movies. Hello. Absolute Battlefield Earth's appalling. It's up there with it's got to be a truly bad film, but so badly bad that it's bad, if that makes sense, and that you can just laugh at it. It's appalling. I'm trying to think, wasn't that kind of after a high point in John Travolta's career, wasn't it? I think. Duncan Idaho was at the door. Please let him in. There's 20 Sardaukar after him. Rip. It's just, I don't know. I always think that. I always think people at the door. It's just our dogs bouncing off the doors and barking at probably a cat outside, There we go. But yeah. As I think it's one wee thing, guys, I'll point out to you, and I do like to point this out, is that hang on. After John Travolta's career revival from Pulp Fiction, I was wondering, it had to be he produced Battlefield Earth. It had to be John Travolta's had to be up, gone, if you see what I mean, in his career, and it had to be at a point where he was rolling on a high. So so I watched Battlefield Earth in the 90s. That's horrible. I wish it had been like in a different decade or something. Wait, that's mine. Can you recommend me some books on Hubbard? It seems interesting. Was the Battlefield Earth movie not a Hollywood homage to Hubbard? I think it was meant to be a let's show off a lot of Scientology principles, and kind of let's make a Star Wars for Scientologists, if you see what I mean. So, but it was just absolute cack. It was really bad. It looked like it was made by the BBC whenever they were making things like Blake 7. That's what I would say. That was the quality of it. You get a recommendation there, David, from Grimdark, To the Stars from Hubbard. If you haven't read Battlefield Earth, I'd read it, I suppose. It's not bad, but it's... Somebody pointed out there, it's pretty unbelievable, isn't it? Yeah. I don't know. I wouldn't reckon. I wouldn't waste my time too much with Hubbard. I don't know enough about him, but I've read biographies etc. just for research. So if you want to learn a bit more about him, David, there's a apparently the best biography on L. Ron Hubbard is called Ron the Nut. I'll just type that out for you. Have a look. Great title, by the way. That's it. There's all sorts of interesting things about L. Ron Hubbard. But check it if you want a really good laugh. Look at his career in the Navy. It's just pretty much a walking disaster area, you know. But if you want to do the work, I suppose then you can kind of run from that kind of stuff. I've got a copy of Dianetics here, and then you'll see where that will lead you to with Scientology. But David, he's the one that somebody might be able to tell me where this comes from. But he said the real money, the science fiction writer group that whoever he was talking to, the real money's in religion. And I think it was pretty much to do with the fact that he wasn't selling as well. He wasn't. He was. I think it was something to do with the jealousy of the big four. I thought they always, kind of got that in his head. Yeah. See, that's the way I would put it. If his first name is Lafayette. So Grimdark says if Herbert didn't go fucking insane with Dianetics, he could have been a well-known writer. Well, yeah, now he's a well-known nut, isn't he, Grimdark? David, if you want to kind of get a sense of his science fiction, look at the Church of Scientology, because that's what it is. I think, But to finish on, not that it's any different or put together than any other modern religion, I suppose. Ether Prime says, to finish on topic, what is the lesson Frank Herbert is trying to teach despite his deceptive nature and his metaphorical use of Arrakis from introduction to death? Good question, Ether. That's it. Very quickly, Grimdark saying there that there was the rumoured story of Hubbard and Heinlein betting on who could start a fake religion in a bar. I don't think Heinlein would have done it, though. If you see what I mean. It's interesting. To finish on topic then, excuse me. Get a wee sip here. What's Frank's message? It's tricky. It's, as I point out, I think it's almost schizophrenic. And in one sense, he's warning us that if we, that human beings, was it he says that they inflict themselves upon the environment. We approach things systemically, mechanically, and we don't understand the long-term consequences of what we're doing. And I think really what he wants us to do with his ecological message is understand consequences. Start looking longer, having better eyes, if you see what I mean. But at the same time, that the way we do approach things and approach problems is systemic. And as I said, this is the thing that makes it almost schizophrenic. And I can agree from this point of view myself. I'm working with systems. So I can be a systemic thinker, but the minute systems fall down is when you fail to realize that you're applying them to a human being. If you make a human being into a process or just something that moves through a system, that's the systemic thinking warning, I think. And also that to realize that we're part of our environment, not separate from it. I think you guys would probably get the same thing. But fundamentally, he's commenting on the way our society works and the systems that we have established, and that they're crutches, and that we need to be. I think it's a lot of us need to be our individual geomorphic agents, I suppose. But he's also warning us, I suppose, that if we all do act en masse or individually to work out our planetary needs and our ecological problems, he's also worried about someone rising up and taking control of that for their own reasons, if you see what I mean. The hero warning is linked into the ecology warning fundamentally. If Frank was talking to you about somebody today, he'd be what the person that you could apply Frank's warnings to is, I've said, it's not about warning you about the Baron or something. It would be somebody like, and I'm not saying is, but somebody like Greta Thunberg, who's got massive has got a hold of the popular consciousness, is a hero to many people, and ecology is her platform. So Frank's not necessarily that's where it's coming from, but he's saying it's quite possible. But that's it. But it is so we need to use systems, but we can't have systemic thinking. We need to integrate more symbiotically into our society, and we need to look at the consequences for everything that we do. Um, Something like that. I think. But again, do you get that sense from it as well? I'll just run through a few of these comments here. But thank you for that. Was a good question. Heinlein was opposed to organized religion, so probably when Heinlein's a rebel. I like Heinlein a lot. Heinlein got a little incesty in his later works. Well, he said, well, if you're, yeah, well, Time Enough for Love. You've got he's shagging his own grandmother way back, isn't it? Way back in the Wild West. But not only that, does he clone himself, and then has two daughters who are actual female clones of his male self. If you see that, it gets Time Enough for Love's a bit. It's very good though. It really, really is very good. If I'm not right, Time Enough for Love. A lot of his books begin with the hero waking up on a hospital bed. I think Time Enough for Love does, and I'm pretty sure Stranger in a Strange Land does as well. Heinlein did review Dune and said it was powerful, convincing, and most ingenious. I think I'd say that if you pick, I often say this: if you take the big four, even though everybody calls them the big three, that's these days, which is wrong. But Heinlein and Herbert much more together than Asimov and Clarke are a good pair there, I think. But okay, all right, Noodles. But so that's my dog. She's just wheezing there. You okay, pups? But Herbert and Heinlein have the 60s sensibilities about them. And if you understand what I mean, Arthur C. Clarke and Isaac Asimov are a lot more straight. They're too straight. I'd put it this way: I think their science fiction could be a lot better if they'd mucked about a bit in the 60s, if you see what I mean. Brad Rose, around the time you mentioned Hubbard, you talk of semantics. What is that book about? That's general semantics. Is another similar philosophy to Dianetics. It said it's a linguistic based product. General semantics, Brad, is. Let me see if is it still up here. It's not a book I like to hang around. No, I think I took it back downstairs. Actually, general semantics is this. It's a kind of linguistic theory, psychological linguistic theory, I would argue, and it's the work of a guy called Alfred Korzybski. And if you have a wee look online, the famous thing that general semantics is for is you've probably heard this one: the map is not the territory. It's a load of hooey, quite frankly. As I've said before, but you can find wisdom in all sorts of things. But it's about it's quite similar to Dianetics, I'd argue. These kind of linguistic. A lot of this stuff's turning up in the 30s and people trying to develop mental powers and all of this kind of thing. A lot of it's basically just redesigned rhetoric. If you understand rhetoric is a set of skills, if you like, about how to manipulate people using your words and your voice, pretty much, and pretty much getting them to manipulate themselves for your own end, if you do it right. If you see what I mean. One of those things, if it sounds too good to be true, guys, I'd say it is too good to be true. Superbot says, warnings of the dieback coming at the end of the petrol age. Dune dies after all. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you said that. It's a number of you pointed out today that you were genuinely shocked when Arrakis is obliterated. As was I, and I thought, whoa, hang on, this is the ecological sci-fi book of this is the book. What he's just blown up his planet. What's going to happen? And of course we get, so it is. It's what is the lesson? Is it just there's our destruction? Soup pot, is that really it? The Fremen are doomed, by the way. I mean, everybody looks at the Fremen. If they haven't read too far in, the Fremen are. Arguably Dune is the story of the destruction of the Fremen. If you want to look at it from a different point of view. And the planet, how it ends. Ether says, I took a very different lesson than most. I saw it as a warning against eco-terrorism. I saw a message against use of ecology as a political weapon of statecraft. There's that there, but really what they do, depending on how you look at it, it's just really just military tactics, I suppose. Chris Gibson says, Blake 7, quality entertainment. I like Jenna, but I understood the whole Servalan thing. I'll get me cool. Ah, dear. Well, it was just kind of that. I got the sense that most of Battlefield Earth was filmed in a quarry, if you understand what I mean, Chris, and so was a lot of Blake 7. Servalan thing, you understand the whole maximum power. Yeah, Servalan was brilliant. What a great villain. Get me cooked. Frank Herbert needs a right Rushmore with Heinlein, Asimov, and Clarke, and the big four sci-fi writers, not three. Very good, Grimdark. I think there's a couple of other. Yeah, it's all about the big four was all about book sales, wasn't it? Why Herbert's been removed? I know exactly why he's been removed. I don't need anybody to tell me. I figured it out. I might actually do a video on it. But something maybe if you all want a bit of Frank Herbert activism, you could have his relegation on Wikipedia put back, because you can reference that he's in the big four very easily. Brian Herbert's Trillion Year Spree, etc., etc. So there are references to Frank Herbert being the big four, the science fiction super league, and it's the work of one science fiction academic, pretty much, and a journalist that's relegated it. There we go. Let me see. Just catching up. Oh, hang on. Ether, I missed the last. The eco-terrorism. Ecology is a political weapon of statecraft, which I think is very important in this modern age. Yeah. Fundamentally, it's about anything can be a weapon, Ether, but the fundamental with statecraft is deceit is its prime weapon. And Frank's quite overt in that lesson. I think he tries to point it out a number of times. Keith Cole says, check out Overly Sarcastic Productions review of Stranger in a Strange Land for an interesting take on it. Okie dokie. Will do. Overly Sarcastic Productions. I'm very fond of that book, but I've only read it twice, and again a long time ago. But I remember reading Strange in a Strange Land, and the first couple of pages making me quite angry on behalf of the hero. And I thought that once I realized what was being done by the author, I thought it was done well. But it's an interesting book. It's definitely way out there. Do you know what I mean? If in terms of weird books of the 60s, Stranger in a Strange Land is your counterculture Bible, isn't it? Overly Sarcastic Productions. Have we look at that? Thank you. I think you pinged the wrong one. Papa Grimdark, enjoy your channel, by the way. Sootpot says, after the destruction of Dune, Chapter House takes off the start of a new cycle. Yeah, well, I think, again, we're going to see the transplanted world. We were talking about the possibility of there being something cyclical to the Dune story. And if somebody pointed out, it wasn't myself, but somebody pointed out that you could have the story end with the last surviving worm being transplanted back onto old Earth or something, and it all being a cyclical loop. All those great science fiction tropes, eh? Chris gives us a little known facts. The fans of Blake 7 Doctor Who did used to meet once a year at a quarry, used in both shows. It'll be on the web. So I can believe that, yeah. It was the standard alien landscape of the BBC. That's somebody was asked, we were talking about should be filmed Stormbringer, or was it Hawkman? Somebody said the BBC had got the rights. And please, not the BBC. And that's kind of why, I suppose. A lot of the BBC modern fantasy sci-fi stuff looks not good, I think. Blake 7 was great. I love Blake 7. I like the old Doctor Who too. Chapter House, Ether Prime says, was very interesting. One of the reasons I don't agree with most readings of Dune as pro-ecological fatalist novel. Oh no, I wouldn't. I don't think it's fatalist. I wasn't aware that people looked at it that way, Ether. I don't get a sense of fatalism from it, but it is unfinished. And I totally believe Frank was heading full steam towards something. And he's a clever enough writer that he's not going, you can see how he works in terms of keeping threads together, revealing stuff, all of the interconnectivity. It was outrageously amount of work he did on this. And I think he absolutely, as much as there's a 30-page treatment, as somebody pointed out the other night, I think he absolutely knew where he was going with this. And I don't think he would have. I think we point this out, guys. We talk about the the difference between Dune and what's called, I suppose, the apocalyptic nature of ecological literature at the time, and why Dune doesn't have that apocalyptic tone. That and we sort of talked about it. As a few people believe this is the reason why people can come back to Dune for that is it's not it's not all doom and gloom, I think, but it's also not oh, do buy this book and learn or else the world's dead, this kind of thing. He's getting you. So I don't think it's pro-ecological fatalist, and I say stuff that's pro-ecological fatalist either prime falls into the category of cat or apocalyptic ecological literature. If you see what I mean, we mentioned some of this stuff that's just out to scare the crap out of you. So I don't think Dune works on. Yeah, so I agree with you. By the way, so I'm just trying to get you don't agree with most readings that I agree with you. It shouldn't be read that way because it's not. I think, and I think we've presented enough evidence here to show that. I think read from OSP dislikes grimdark fantasy genre, which I respectfully disagree with. Dislikes fantasy genre. What grimdark is that? Just I know that's your name, Grimdark. Is that a type? Grimdark Elven lore master, sorry, but I take it Grimdark fantasy is a new genre. From what you're saying there, OSP dislikes Grimdark fantasy, which I respect if you disagree with. Genre is genre, I think, isn't it? Thank you for your time again tonight, Doc. No problem, Brad. Second, it's been a good one tonight. We've stayed well on. As I said, it's the nature of Dune. It can lead us anywhere. If you want good grimdark recommendations, I recommend Joe Abercrombie's First Law, Glenn Cook's First Law, excuse me, Mark Lawrence, Prince of Thorns, and R. Scott Bakker's Second Apocalypse. Grimdark Elven Lore Master, I smell heresy, get the flamer, the heavy flamer. Oh, is this the kind of Warhammer 40k stuff I'm thinking? Can't shake the knowledge that Frank said the worms were brought to Arrakis from elsewhere. They're an invasive species. Yeah. It's there. As I said, yeah. There's a lot of stuff on the worms throughout the six books, and you can piece together the life cycles of the worms, and that's interesting. I think that if I think hardly anybody ever would have ever done this, and I actually had to do it. But to go through all the books and put the pieces down and go, that right, that's that, and you will get the life cycle of the worm if you read all 6 books. If you don't read all 6 books, you won't get it, by the way. You have to. And I assume that he was going to give us something in the 7th book, but the nature of what the worms are is released to us slowly as we go throughout the series, and I'm sure there is more to come. There you go, Holly. Hello. Grimdark is defined by the meat grinder of its worlds and people. Thank you very much. Could be 2 Dunes, the Ronan says. Ronan 99, yeah. Yeah, and also things do get worse. But it's the lesson I think that Frank gives us. Each time we're warned, but we fall for it anyway. Then we're warned again, and he makes it much worse. Part of me thinks, as I said, the last Dune book was going to be something else altogether. I think it would have full on wallop, if you know what I mean, and it would have been brought to a conclusion in a certain way, I think. And I also think that certainly within the mythological material that Frank's working with historically, I think a whole bunch of Deus Ex Machinas would not have been on his list. I think we'd have had genuine conclusions to some things and mysteries. He wouldn't have wrapped everything up, 2 Dunes, Chapter House, and Arrakis. It could have been, could have been anything. But I think there was definitely somewhere with the worms, something. Again, as I said, if he's given us all that, I'll put it this way: he's given, as I've went through the books, Frank has given us, and I've gone and found it, the entire life cycle of the worm. There's only 1 piece of information, 2 pieces of information at book 6, at Chapter House, that he has not given us. Where do they come from? And how did they get onto Arrakis? Pretty much. That's it. Where do they come from, or who made them? But how did they get onto the planet? They're not from there, And again, that makes us think about, again, just think about a planet like this turned into a desert by one species. Um, we do, and we to look at the cane toad, for example, in Australia, and the damage that it did to the environment there. Exists nowadays an animal similar to the sandworms, some kind of species very harmful to the environment. Well, yeah, and the I think we have the life cycle of the sea lamprey up on my community page as well. But who brought them? Yeah, who made them? Actually, that's the other thing. They're an animal plant hybrid as well. So the word hybrid suggests humans. If you see what I mean, humans working in a lab. Where's the lab? Where's old Earth? Why is nobody on Earth? Why is nobody talking about Earth? It's questions, and we do kind of want to know these answers, don't we? And it's not too bad if we don't. Just the speculation is mighty, I think. When I hear most people talking, Ether Prime says, when I hear most people talking about Dune, most say the first three books are good, but then he goes off the rails. E.g., most people check out at God Emperor of Dune, whereas I think the last two books are some of the best in the series, second only to the first book. Not a soundtrack. Worms. Genetic engineering. Um, yeah, I think the God Emperor is something that could be just a bit too much for some people. It's you go, what is this? And it is a bit alien, but it's I don't know. It doesn't take long to read. I always recall reading God Emperor of Doom with utter sense of fascination. Once we get in, I think it's just past the first chapter and you're away. You know, but yeah, some kind of species very harmful to the environment, the human. Yeah, it's interesting. Um, but yeah, without your environment, we're all kaput. I suppose we really are at that kind of point. I think, and if you look at government thinking in terms of what Frank's warning about, oh, we must do such and such by 2020. Oh, well, hang on, that was last year. You know what I mean? It's the where's your long term thinking? But we're looking at only 100 years ahead. The problems that we have are continuing. They're not going to go away, and we need to deal with things now and keep dealing with them, I suppose. But the interesting thing is if you look at 5 generations of human being gone, then who gives a monkeys about people 100 years down the road? And what if it's just the end of the species? That's the thing. Some people think in terms of the collective, if you want to call it that, the human race, the species. Others, no, it doesn't really matter to them too much. Just be an individual, live your time. Sootpot says, well, could the worms have mutated after being introduced to Dune? More evolution? Quite possible. Or that, yeah, I mean, that's an ongoing thing. Everything evolves, absolutely. Again, yeah, it is a big. So I kind of think about the if they're some kind of version of like a lamprey, then what's the plant that they're? I don't tend to think about too much about the animal part of the worm because I kind of think I know what it is roughly, or it's something like that. But what's the plant aspect? And that's got to be something to do with the way the almost like the chemical factory that they have. It's fascinating just to think about Herbert's imagination of these things. God Emperor is one of the most unique and interesting science fiction books ever. I totally agree. It's a work of an incredible imagination. That's the way I look at it, and I like to think imagination is the best skill that you should ever develop. It's the number one survival thing that you should have is a good imagination, and it's the thing that we crush out of kids in school, isn't it? No daydreaming or procrastinating, just. But Neopalpa, it is so imaginative, and it's got its framework and real people and real events and stuff like that, like most of the Dune series does. But it's an absolute cracker. Um, Ron99 says God Emperor Dune is hard for people because Leo's the ultimate predator. Absolutely. you know, um, I dare say there's the odd few people that might look at it as a kind of blasphemous type thing, but I don't know. But We need more people to solve more problems. Over 100 years ago, people were saying we need to depopulate the earth, hence the rise of eugenics, which is still alive and well in today's world. Yeah, eugenics is practiced in the ancient world a fair bit, either. Mm. Sparta practiced eugenics. Keith Cobb says, I doubt our own disregard for our environment will be the end of our species. When pressed, we tend to engineer our way out of just about everything. I don't think a few billion will die to figure it out. No, I don't think it. I think, Keith, you see, it's kind of one of those things. Does evolution happen over billions of years, or does it happen overnight? And extinction, will it take us 100 years, or will it happen overnight? Because, sorry, do you remember that video where all those people kept going every 5 seconds? I click my fingers, a child dies. Do you remember that? Was it all them actors? We're all shouting at the screen. Would you stop clicking your fingers, please? Oh, it was a horrible kind of thing. Um, mm, it's our environment. I think we could just go in a day. I think, to be honest with you, it's if atmospherics got so bad, um, get a good we good hole in the ozone all over in a second. And all we got to do is get hit by a decent sized asteroid. Our doom is there every second of every day, I think, guys. And that's what makes it great to be a human being. We get on with it despite knowing about our own doom, don't we? To be or not to be, that is the question. It's the old one. I don't know. Humanity actually needs to just mature a bit, grow up a bit. I think we're bonkers. I really do think quite a lot of people are mad, to be honest with you. Don't forget that in God Emperor of Dune, you get an ecological metamorphosis that we had never witnessed in the books. A new stage of the life of the worm is shown. Yes. And we also get the God Emperor returning with his pearl of awareness to all the new worms. What? That's another evolution. That's even mixing in human DNA with the worm DNA. If we go by that, yeah. It's so. What's that about? Um, Keith Cobb says, I agree. Ether Prime says that Keith Cobb, I agree. Uh, yeah, we can't. We can't. I just think we're not there, and I don't think there's enough engineers either. But I suppose it's about natural resources and what will you engineer to fix our problem, and how much oil and natural resources will you need to engineer that problem? If you see what I mean, it's the engineer part. What is it called? The Presbyterian fixation is what you two gentlemen are talking about. That's what Frank Herbert calls it. And he notes it's a big trope of Isaac Asimov's. That's the this idea that simply more tech will get us out of this problem, and so let's make some more tech. Yay! So it is interesting. It is interesting, isn't it? Stop clicking your fingers. You get. I know. What was that? That was a horrible advert. That was every time I clap my hand. Aye, and you're just going. Would you stop doing it then, please? Every time you clap my hands, a child, don't clap your hands. I know it's stupid, but there we go. Don't forget that you got it. Yeah, so as Ronan99 says, you get an ecological metamorphosis that we've never seen. This new stage of the worm. The God Emperor entering into the. So the Atreides, you've got an Atreides who becomes the worm species. You've mixed in, and is that part of the? Is that a breeding program? Ronan99, is that the intent that the God Emperor, that's the way his death is his reproduction, and he'll always have a pearl of his awareness in all the worms? Watching but unable to act, isn't it like that? I think. Brad Rose is with when eugenics thought of it's the Nazis or America. I saw a thing about the socialist think tank that promoted originally Aldous Huxley was a member. Well, yeah, there's Huxley's work has got stuff on Brave New World. We look at genetics in particular. But yeah, no, the Spartans. Sure, I'm sure you are. A number of Greek societies. There's a number of ancient societies practice what's called just death by exposure, where any child showing abnormalities, the whole idea is leave it at the top of a cliff or just throw it off a cliff, pretty much. But the Spartans practice that. If your child's imperfect, it's not good enough to be a Spartan. So it's there's a wee bit of it. We mentioned a wee bit of it in these one of our episodes actually. Eugenics is supposed to be good. EU means good. I follow technology very closely and I see every day new solutions that fix old problems that were previously believed to be unsolvable. Yes. Totally agree. But it is a race, I think, isn't it? There's got to be a balance, I suppose. If the technological solution to everything is that we'll all have to wear suits when we go outside and move underground because the heat's that bad, I don't know. Some of the solutions they don't require. Put it this way, guys. I've been observing kind of things here since COVID. Some of our problems just require us to stop doing something. That's all. Uh, I think it doesn't need new technology. Just stop doing that. If you see what I mean. But yeah, and as Souppot points out, we get new problems every day. New problems we never had. It's an ongoing everything. It's all ongoing, all evolving to be human, to be to be alive. It's bonkers being human. I think and all the poor animals that don't know how to evolve and deal with all of the technologies that we invent. I think that's the problem. I think as well. We do need other life to help us along our way. Too many Karens will ruin the world. The ultimate Kwisatz Haderach, a fusion of man and the creature that produces the source of the ultimate, of the universe's power. Good point about the new DNA combo. So there would be older worms without the pearl of awareness. Yeah. Or unless, who knows? Again, where did that? The Maori from New Zealand also did the Chakleff overnight thing. It's if you read your myths and stuff, you'll find it in almost every culture in the world. Um, to be honest with you, basis of many many kind of fairy tales and legends and stuff that take this child away, and or often there's a myth attached to it or something else, and then often that will return, that child will return and cause all sorts of destruction. Read Super Freakonomics, the pollution spewing bane of the city. The car was once very much cleaner than the alternative horses. Piles of literal horseshit produced in one city was staggering. But you can do stuff with more horseshit. Keith, have you ever seen a film called Quacks Her Fortune Has a Cousin in the Bronx? It's a Gene Wilder comedy about a Dublin manure seller. It's a great film. I've only ever seen this film once, and I remember it very fondly. And I've never seen it since. But any Gene Wilder fans might know this one. But it's called Quacks Her Fortune Has a Cousin in the Bronx. I don't know. Again, it depends on where you're at, what your situation is. As you talk about the cars in big cities, so many cars in so many places. I'm in a reasonably small rural country, but our pollution's starting to get bad. But I can see what it looks like to live in a clean country where the air and water is clean, and then I can fly across there to England and understand that to me their air is appalling and that their water is horrible. And I mean it's not just to say it out of badness. It's just a comparison. It's true. You know. Ron and most worms, if not all, died during to the greening of Arrakis during the God Emperor's rule. Yeah, but he gets his little career of um, his personal desert where the last worms are. But it's the point where he dies and goes into the river. The water releases all of these basically little sand track vectors from him that will carry. So he becomes all the new worms. And we must understand at that point that they will go and change the ecology of Arrakis again, won't they? Though I can't mind what the ecology of Arrakis is like in Heretics of Dune. I can't remember what state the planet's in post God Emperor. Ethan Prime says, "Do you believe tinkering with humanity's genetics will bring us ruin or enhance our evolution? In my opinion, as long as it doesn't lead to a caste system, it is good. Genetic augmentation is central. It's absolutely useful. Yeah, there's lots of bad genes and things that we could get resequence in people and help them do all sorts of ways. Yeah, and actually we change our genes in utero, so it's possible for our genes to be altered due to external stimuli while we're in the womb. So absolutely. Keith says, have to go. Nice chatting with you, everyone. I'm going to wrap up now, Keith. Anyway, I'll just run the last few comments, guys, and we'll say good night. But thanks for joining us, Keith, and very good night to you. The Ron 99 says, ultimately, since the honoured matter is torch Dune, only the worms with Leto's pearl would remain correct. Um, And Fergus Kelly, you've just joined us. Hello, Fergus. Hello, friends. Fergus says, we're just wrapping up, Fergus, sadly. It's a wee bit late here. I'm a wee bit tired. But thank you for popping in. Anyway, we've been chatting about all things to do with Arrakis and its ecology tonight. And we're kind of chatting about the worms a good bit. Around 99, you bring up an interesting point. Wouldn't that worm become sentient? Yeah. Well, the worms, I think we get the sense that that's what we're told, Ether and Ron and 99, that they have a hint of his awareness. Must look at the quote, but he says, but that he's aware, he's looking out, but unable to act. So they're absolutely. And if that's the case, it makes you think about the original worms too, you know. Would that worm be brought to Chapter House, I mean? So, ciao, guys. Be well. To be continued. Thank you, Sitpot, and hello, Fergus. And sorry, Fergus. We're going to be saying goodbye just about now. So, let me just quickly check what we've got coming tomorrow, and that will be here. Which episode we have, because we're heading towards the end now, folks. And Desert God and Dust Devil is tomorrow's episode. So tomorrow it's all about the worm folks. So I hope you can join me after the episode. And in the meantime, thanks a lot. I hope you're all keeping well wherever you are. And from Turkey to the Dune fans, hello, Fergus in Turkey. Hello to you, sir. I hope you're keeping well. And listen, we'll catch up very soon. Hello from the Philippines. We're a wee global audience here, Fergus. It's quite great. So hello back to you from Northern Ireland. And anyway, folks, I will say good night to you and let you head on. So it's been a pleasure as always. Everybody take care, and we'll see you here tomorrow night after the episode. So all the very best now. Good night. Look after yourselves. All the best. See you later, folks.